All right, it's time to talk about the unlucky seven. If you have these players, you're panicked. There is no question. So it's not a question of should you worry, it's how much and what do you do? We're getting down to the wire. Fantasy playoffs are getting ready to start in a lot of baseball leagues. So some of these struggling stars, whether it's been just recently since the All Star break or maybe all season long, do you keep the faith? Do you put them on your bench? Or do you just part ways and cut them? I've got three hitters, three starting pitchers, and one closer, or at least former closer, to discuss. So let's break it down. Let's start with the best player on the worst team in baseball. Historically bad, in fact, that of course, the Chicago White Sox. And I'm talking about Luis Robert Jr., stud outfielder who's been anything but. Really looked like he was a nice buy low candidate before the trade deadline, didn't get traded. Okay, fine. And since then, predictably, he has not flourished in Chicago. But it's getting bad. It's beyond the point of buying low. Now you got to wonder, do you keep him in your lineup or keep him at all? Because how patient can you afford to be with your fantasy playoffs coming up? His season average has just hit below the 200 mark. It's at 198 after Sunday. This is a player that has that tantalizing power speed combo, and yet he hasn't homered since July 24th. And yeah, a couple of steals here and there is nice, but that's not cutting it for your everyday outfield spot. Since the calendar flipped to August, or put it another way, since he realized he's stuck on the White Sox, he's only got 2 hits in the entire month, and that's a total of 35 at bats now. Plenty of offers in there. So I think it's obvious you're going to have to put him on your bench until something changes. But do you go all the way and just cut loose and say, forget it? Maybe this guy, this whole team is checked out. Well, I could be wrong on this because let's face it, yeah, the whole team has been checked out all season long. They finally fired the manager, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have some sort of inspiring turnaround the rest of the way. He's still stuck in a bad offense and not a great environment in general. And he doesn't have anything contractually to look forward to. He's not an impending free agent. Doesn't really need to go out of his way to impress because he's still signed through this year and next year. Now, that said, you'd think as a big leaguer, he would want to do the best he can the rest of this way. I'm going to keep him for now, but on my bench until things change. Look, if there's another week or two and things don't get any better, maybe you can go as far as to drop him. But again, this is a player who I hate to just put out there in waivers and then finally see him pick it up and somebody else has him. Does the same go for star outfielder Adolis Garcia of the Texas Rangers, who was a hero last year throughout the postseason, championship team, and everything's different this year for the Rangers, obviously. And for Garcia, I mean, coming out of the gate, he was one of the best hitters in all of baseball in April. And it feels like ever since that month ended, he has just continued to struggle. In fact, despite being a prolific home run hitter and taking part in the home run derby, he hasn't homered at all in August. But here's the thing that makes me say I'm still holding out hope. I know it feels like this has just gone on too long at this point. Some people have dropped him. Okay, fine. I'm going to keep him because we are seeing some encouraging signs. So, first of all, in August, although the power is still out, his average has gone up. He's hitting 357 in August. So he's getting base hits. His strikeout rate is lower, not just this month, but really overall this season. It's even lower than last season. It seems like he was selling out for power a lot more last season, and it did pay off. Well, this year, unfortunately, we'd like to see that power back, but at least he is getting more base hits recently. I think the power is obviously still there. I mean, we know just from seeing him, it's not like this guy's all of a sudden been sapped of his power, but also his hard hit rate, his barrel rates are still pretty good. Eventually, the power will come back in terms of actual counting stats like home runs and RBIs. Look, the Rangers offense has been ice cold over the past few days, but maybe that also starts to pick up. They are technically not out of it yet. And he did get a little bit of a message, was dropped down to seventh in the batting order. He responded on Sunday by going 2 for 4 with an RBI, run scored. Let's see if that sparks something. Then the San Diego Padres have been on fire lately offensively. Ha-Sung Kim has not been a big part of it really for most of the season. A lot of people have moved on. Should you do that? Is that the right move? Or is this guy going to make you regret that? Well, his rostership rate has dropped already about 5% in the past week. It should probably be more. I've been holding candle for him, just hoping at some point things would turn around. Even if the batting average isn't going to be great, because let's face it, he's not a 300 hitter. It was that home run, stolen base combo that was the appealing part to him, and that just isn't there. Even if his average does go up to, let's say, 250, 260, okay, fine. Well, it's not enough. I don't want to get fooled here. I mean, this is somebody who, kind of hit a low because he had 5 straight hitless games and then saw himself on the bench for 2 straight. And since then, okay, 4 for 11, got hits in 3 straight games, a run, an RBI. So what? It's not enough. He has not shown really any power, even close to last year. Not that he's even a power hitter, but he has not even homered since June 22nd. That's right, June. And it feels like he'll steal a base here and there, maybe like once a week, nab you one of those thefts. Again, that's not cutting it. You can get replacement level players on the waiver wire who can fill in for some of these stats, basically all of these stats, right? And his expected batting average, we're not going to see a huge turnaround. It's only 246. I think it's finally time. Let's go ahead and cut him. Now, having the right starting pitchers down the stretch is more important than ever. What do you do with somebody who is a frontline starter like Max Fried, who since coming off the IL, and we all got excited to see him back in our rotations until he actually pitched? First start back, 5 earned runs in 3 1/3 inning, and then the next time, 4 earned runs in 5 innings. And even more discouraging, 8 walks in those last 2 starts. Although, on the other hand, it's interesting because he did notch 15 strikeouts in those, 8+ innings. I don't know if we can use rust as a really big, strong argument here for what we've seen with lack of control. Because, well, first of all, he did get a lot of strikeouts, so you can't say he was wild all the time. He did walk some batters. Maybe he's just pressing, trying to be a little too perfect, trying to keep his team in the race. Who knows what. But it wasn't like he was gone that long. This is not a guy who's missed a year plus. I mean, he's had a couple of IL stints, sure, but I don't think that's it. This is somebody who feels like he is just putting too much pressure on himself, just like he did the very beginning of this season. Freed is somebody I'm going to keep. He's still showing all the signs of being a top level pitcher. I'm going to just chalk this up to him trying to figure things out. I think he'll get right. He'll be fine. So I wouldn't worry. Don't push the panic button here. And I'm not dropping him at all. A pitcher who's been worse lately for an extended time is Cutter Crawford. Since the All Star break, it's like a completely different guy. In his 4 starts since that break, he's allowed a total of 22 earned runs in 18 2/3 innings. I've been asked a lot about Cutter Crawford the last couple of weeks. I've tried to stay patient. I've tried to say, let's hold the line here. There's still some sign that, look, he's striking batters out. He could turn around, but I have to say at this point, I've dug into the numbers and I've convinced myself it's not worth keeping him. I think you're just going to have to let him go. There are a couple of really big issues that make me concerned. So, first of all, is a pretty obvious one. It's the fact that he's given up more home runs than any pitcher in the major leagues. If you look at some of the underlying issues, now, one of the things I like about Cutter Crawford is he's got that pitch mix, which ironically includes a very effective cutter. And that's been the issue. Cutter is not throwing that cutter very well lately. It's been getting hit harder and harder as the season has gone on. His four-seamer has been pretty good, and that's what's saving him. And he's pitching smartly because he's throwing that four-seamer more often. But there's only so often you can throw the same pitch, especially when it's just a straight-up fastball over and over again. You need to keep hitters off balance, and he just hasn't been able to do it. So part of the reason also might be the fact that he is just getting tired. Because let's face it, at this point right now, he's got 131 innings under his belt this season, and that has already surpassed his high over a major league season, his previous high by about 4 innings. Even if Crawford settles down, gets better, I think we've already seen the best he has to offer for this season, and the risk is just too much. You can't have a guy just completely wreck your ratios from this point on. So it's time to cut Crawford. And a lot of people want to do the same for Taj Bradley, who had been amazing as soon as he's been activated, looking like a breakout. And then all of a sudden, it's like maybe the mirage is over. The last 2 starts, he's given up 9 earned runs in a total of 9 innings. So hitters just figured him out. Is he getting tired? I mean, is the player who's had some injuries, a young player? Nah, I'm not worried about any of that because he did have a pretty extended stretch of pitching last year. Don't think has anything to do with fatigue. And also, I'm not going to worry too much about this small sample because, again, this is just 2 starts. He's been bad. All season before then, he had been really consistently good overall in the season. 3.07 ERA, 1.09 whip. And overall, I'm actually encouraged by what I've seen in some of his last couple of starts because he didn't really do it to himself. The big issue with him last year, like with Crawford this year, is the home run ball. He gave up way too many long balls. Well, he hasn't done that. Even in those last couple of starts where he was hit hard, he hasn't given up a home run at all in 6 of his last 7 starts. Really cut down on that. And it's not walks either, not lack of command. He has allowed fewer than 3 walks in a game in 6 of the last 7 starts. I'd like to say Taj Bradley is a great buy low if your league is still trading. And if not, if you've got Taj Bradley, I'd say don't cut him. Hold on here. And in fact, I'm also keeping him in my rotation. And then, we got to talk about Camilo Doval, the guy who I'll go out and admit I thought was one of the safest closers in the league for fantasy before the year started. And he was until June. I mean, he led the National League in saves last year with 39. Rock solid, good situation, good home park, good everything except for the walk rate. But yeah, a little bit high. And then this year, it got crazy high. That's why if you look at his ratios, well, he's got a 4.70 ERA. That's not great, but sometimes with the relievers, a couple of bad outings, it can inflate. But a 1.61 whip, yeah, that's due to the fact that he's got the third highest walk rate out of any pitcher who has at least 200 plate appearances against. And things have just gotten worse as of late. That's why the Giants felt like they had to do something. I mean, just removing him from the closer role wasn't enough. They felt like he needed a reset. So he's actually been optioned down to the minors, and we don't know how long he'll be there. And this is something that, again, it's not just that the walk rate has been high. You look at a guy like Tanner Scott, his walk rate is worse, and yet he was one of the most coveted, trade assets at the deadline. People wanted him. Doval, you'd think he was at least going to be safe, on the roster, but it's just gotten worse because since June, 6.75 ERA and 4 blown saves. The Giants just, scrambling to keep their playoff hopes alive. I guess they felt like this was the move. So one more time, here's the question. Do you just cut loose a guy like this who is no longer giving you value right now? Do you stash him on the bench, especially if you have an NA spot, or just keep him on there? Well, obviously, it doesn't make sense to keep him in your lineup or keep him on your bench. I'm only keeping him if I do have an NA spot where I can stash him. If that's the case, and I'm not sacrificing some high end prospect, I'm not dropping Junior Caminero out of my NA spot to keep Camilo Doval. But for the most part, if I can stash him, I will. But if not, you can let him go. Look, the best case scenario is a couple of weeks from now, they do bring him back. They give him a chance to earn back that job. Sure, he'll get you some saves down the stretch and maybe not kill your whip. And the worst case scenario is he just never gets back to the big club, or he does and he's just a middle reliever and we see somebody else get those saves. The risk here, not worth the potential reward. You can pick up saves here and there from another source. You know what? Just pick up Ryan Walker, who looks like he's going to be the closer for the Giants right now. Always got to make those hard decisions for your lineup. Do what's best for your team because it's crunch time. You got to do what it takes to win. And that includes, of course, picking up the right players. Don't forget the waiver wire video is still coming out every single week. Here's the latest one.